images, patterns, things to recollect. It's not just the long, deep sleep that comes when the fear is left. The cold is felt, the slipping away of feeling is noted and then succumbed to. The mind functions. Time is distorted, jumbled, telescoped, accordion, but there is a sense of time even so. And I remember things. I remember the way it began. I remember the way it was in the beginning.
Dad, I think he's lost his mind. He's never been like this before. Tonight he was almost crazy.
What did you say?
Oh, crazy things, that he's some kind of a spaceman and that they're taking over the Earth and that we're all going to die.
Every time it starts with the speed of light. Mentally disturbed. When a space agency is putting on my part.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, what's up? It is Experimentally Ill Radio, and I am your host, Mike O'Toole, and it is August 22nd, 2015, and it's episode 82, man. And of course, first, of course, follow me on Twitter at Mike O'Toole, but definitely want to go to experimentally'ill.com. That's where you can check out all of our shows. We're talking about arts and entertainment in the New England area, where we're based, all the way over to Hollywood. And of course, I'm continuing to do my thing, profiling far out artists and friends of mine. And but you know, before we get into the show, I want to remind you too, when you go to experimentally'ill.com, I want you to go under that support the show tab, and I want you to throw a coin in our cup. There's the PayPal button. So do a PayPal donation, anything you can give, because it's the DIY arts thing, man. It's the whole starving artist thing. And also, how can you listen to the show? Well, you can go to experimentally'ill.com. You can listen right on the website, but you can also listen on Stitcher. Go into the App Store and get the Stitcher Radio app. That way you can listen to Experimental Radio and all your other favorite podcasts wherever you go. And you can also just grab that feed off the website and plop it in any, podcast app that you have. And so, what do we say here? We say, where there is an ill, there is a way. So be part of the experiment. Episode 82, August 22nd, 2015. I'm Mike O'Toole, and I'm excited to welcome an old friend of mine. For really briefly, for historians out there, this guy was actually the last guest that we had when we were a proper live Boston morning radio show. And he's a filmmaker. We're big on filmmakers here because Experimentally Ill Radio kind of came out of doing the Experimentally Ill Film Festival. And we're profiling, experimental filmmakers and artists of all types. And this guy, he is not only a filmmaker, he's a cartoonist, and he's a poet, and a writer, and a world traveler. He's done all kinds of cool stuff that I'm anxious to talk to him about. And for fans of Experimentally Ill at large, the Experimentally Ill Collective, they know him, man. And if you don't know him, you're going to get to know him. His name is Mick Cusimano. Mick, get up there. Get up to the mic. There you go.
All right.
There you go. Hey, man, so thanks for coming on. I know we're sweating it out it's the studio apartment, but I mentioned we did the morning show at Unregular Radio, and I know our friend and also fellow artist and eccentric D.L. Polanski thought you had somehow put a curse on us, that you were our last guest and it became the last morning show. And if just by coincidence, that sound quality was not so good, and I just remember you had such cool stories, and I know on your website, like, you've done, not only do you have your cartoons, your poetry, your films, which I'm a little bit biased because myself and the co-founder and the original co-host, Lawrence Holly, who's now left us in the dust out there in Hollywood, myself, he and I were a part of some of your movies, so we'll talk about that. Also on your site too, like, you've done a lot of cool stuff, traveled all around, and one of the things is, like, you went to a rave or something in Amsterdam. I remember, like, a story like that, and just, like, done all kinds of cool stuff. So, I mean, whatever you want to tell us, like, what was the real origins? And I know kind of filmmaking comes later, And I guess were you originally from somewhere else, and you come to Boston and you fall in with these crazy poet types?
Yeah, that's true.
So tell us about that. If people don't know you.
Okay, I'm Mick Cusimano. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I was doing cartoons about the Beatles in the 60s, way back. I've been a cartoonist forever, and on my 30th birthday, something very strange happened. My sister took me to the Albright Knox Art Gallery in Buffalo, and we walked around the corner, and we ran into Vincent Price. And it was like,
wow, so
surreal.
another like a counterculture icon, film icon for the horror.
The great actor from horror movies and Roger Corman movies and stuff. And to make a long story short, that's when I kind of became a surrealist, because I realized something. When I grew up in the 20s and stuff, you look at people like Brian Jones and Jim Morrison and Jim Hendrix. You see, these guys are great. They're great artists. They've done these great things. And you kind of look up to them in a way. Then when you turn 30, you realize, shit, these guys never made it to 30. So I can't follow them because there's no roadmap to follow.
That's right.
So I realized that one of the great lies in American society, not that there aren't many lies in America, but is people always tell you that you can never do something if you've never done it before. And you go to a job interview, you have no experience. No, get out of here. You've never done this before. You can't do it.
Right.
People in college and in high school or teachers tell you can't do something you've never done before. Don't ever try that again. It's like people are paralyzed with this idea. And I realized I started running marathons. I'd never run more than 5 miles before in my life. I started publishing my cartoons. I came to Boston and met these poets, and I used to sit around drawing cartoon posters for them, and I see them reading poetry every week, and I said, these knuckleheads can write poetry. I can write poetry. So I wrote poetry and got a group of poets, and we went on tour, and we went over to the East Coast, playing in Soho and East Village and Kentucky, and we had 18 poets going all over the place. I'd never written poetry before. I was published, and one thing led to another. I took cartoons, got published in 100 magazines worldwide during the zine revolution, like the 80s and 90s.
Wow, so this is like the real deal.
I was like, all these magazines.
You were an outlaw poet. Right?
Yeah.
That's the real. I got that the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry. They got Alan Kaufman, a poet from New York. They did that anthology. I was kind of talking to that guy online, but those outlaw poets and that whole thing. So you guys just sort of take it up upon yourselves to just, had you kind of like heard about that you can do this, you can be a poet and you can be a touring poet.
Oh, no. We never heard it. I never even knew any poets. I came to Boston, I saw this guy, Billy Barnum, this crazy old poet, white hair.
That's right.
I said,
tell a little bit about that.
Amazing. And I just moved to town, and I stumbled in this bar, I watched them, and I met these other poets from down south, and they said, hey, that's great. And we started hanging out together, and I was living in Bridgewater. We're in Cape Cod actually during the week, and I come to Boston on the weekends, and they said, there's a poetry scene here. I said, oh, okay. So they said, hey, can you do a cartoon poster for our next reading? I said, well, sure. I got nothing else to do. I'm staying in a hotel in Cape Cod all week. There's nobody there in the wintertime, so I drew a couple of cartoons, posters. I gave it to them. And the next night I come to town, this one guy worked at this place with a nighttime security guard. He made 10,000 copies of my poster, and we started handing them out in the subway. So like every week I do new cartoons, and they print out hundreds of copies, of thousands. When we pass them out in the subway, we call ourselves the Underground Surrealists. Mm-hmm. And then we started performing together. We were called the Fire of Prometheus, and we did colleges.
The Fire of Prometheus?
Yeah. It was me.
So you started out really doing. I
was doing cartoons,
doing the cartoons and doing the flyers for these poets, and then at some point they kind of indoctrinate you in. I just said in the audience,
watching these people read poetry, and I was getting bored, and I said, I can read poetry. And
I can friggin' do this.
So I dug this poem out from Jim Morrison called "Celebration of the Lizard," and I read it on stage, and it's not very well known, but it's like. I never went to school and I never learned how to write poetry, but this one poem, "The Celebration of the Lizard," is like it's like a complete graduate course in performance poetry, because he does this poem where he's going fast and he's slow and he's loud and he's quiet and he's got all this whole range of things, and you wonder how this 25-year-old drunken poet came up with this great variety in this one little poem. But it's like, if you follow this poem, if you do it on stage, it almost teaches you how to do all kinds of poetry from every different level. And then I realized years later, I read an interview with Ray Manzarek, and what it was, because Manzarek and Morrison went to UCLA.
From the Doors, yeah.
They went to film school, and I think it was Eric von Stromberg was one of their teachers, and he taught them how to do movies and make, showing the rhythm of, slow and fast and loud and soft.
So he applied.
And he took the theories of film, which they really didn't do much with, and took that and put it into music, and that's how they became such a
and the rhythm of the poetry, right?
Yeah, the rhythm. The rhythm. When they learned about movies, they made the rhythm of the poetry and their music, and that's why the Doors are so dramatic. And that one poem which I listened to was kind of like a 3-minute chorus and performance poetry. Just listening to that one poem. So
that particular
Celebration of the Lizard is called.
What's it called? Celebration of the Lizard.
Yeah, it's on the Absolutely Live album if you can find it.
Wow, by the. Well,
Doors.
Is it
it's
just
Doors Live album? Yeah,
and he does it.
He does the whole thing. Yeah.
Because that was kind of a. I don't know if the Doors were on a. I don't want to make it a thing about the Doors, but it's interesting for your origins too. Jim Morrison, he did a lot of poetry. I don't know if they were like on a break or it was at the same time as doing the lyrics for the band, but that was a big thing. And that's interesting you say that too, because yourself and then a lot of these artist types that we've had like on the podcast. It's interesting. These different creative types that do they do different things. Like you're a filmmaker, a cartoonist, a poet. We had our buddy Rod Weber on, who's a filmmaker, a painter, a musician, guitarist. An actor, all these, and then it's interesting. That's the way you are. I forgot to really, because I forgot, because I hadn't seen you in a while. This is what's cool about the podcast too. It creates kind of an incentive to come together and, if you consider just having a conversation art, it's considered kind of create some art together and an incentive to come together and stuff. As I haven't seen you in, I think probably like over a year, and that's kind of the same thing with my buddy Rod, who was on. He was on episode 81 and episode 80, the previous two. Kind of create an incentive. I forgot to introduce you your proper title, the Professor of Surrealism, because I was going to refer to you like, not that I'm bored, I'm excited, but I'm listening, and it is sort of like it is like giving a lecture on these. You are professing about surrealism, so that's cool. Like. They apply in the different disciplines and stuff. So did you find that you did that? Like when you hear that the guys from the Doors, they were studying film and then they applied into the rhythms and stuff with the poetry and then into the music. Does that relate to you? Like how you, or did you kind of...
Well, when I came to Boston and I met those poets, I brought a book about surrealism I bought in Rochester on the way up. And I read about the history of surrealists and Dali and Magritte and all this stuff. And...
So what is briefly like? What is surrealism? To turn something kind of on its head, right? Something of something.
It's just like using a
dreamlike,
sort of like letting your imagination run wild. Don't worry about being logical or if people understand what you're doing. Just do the wildest stuff and just like Billy Barnum, the old poet. He's like that. He would just like do crazy wild stuff and just. And
he is he is actually related to P.T. Barnum.
He's a descendant of P.T. Barnum, yeah.
From the circus there, man. And like this whole thing, it's like running away to join the circus,
and he's
right?
still performing, 90 years old. He just had his 90th birthday and he came down to Boston and performed.
He's like an immortal.
Oh yeah.
Is it the art that is it that sort of that the whole kind of creative scene like keeps you young, keeps you energized, keeps you...
yeah, I'm always trying to do stuff out, so that's,
Yeah. Keeps you... You're just... Because I know one of the things with the films, I want to talk more... Because I write some poetry, too, and I've been sort of on the fence as far as, like you say, going ahead and just performing it, and then, like, you write something in a certain way, and you kind of hear it in your head, and how do you... Like you say, how do you figure out the rhythms... And there's a school of thought, not mine, but there's a crowd that will say, oh, like poetry is dead, or there's not an audience for it, or something like that. I don't think so. Of course, you talk about music and the Doors, any kind of rock and roll, or like all punk rock, or even hip hop. Rap is really based in poetry and that meter and that rhyme and that rhythm and stuff. And you throw a bass or you throw a bass line or guitar behind it, people are into it. but then you kind of strip it away, and it's just somebody speaking into a mic like we're doing now. And I think it is about how you read it and how you can kind of keep people's attention, you know?
Well, I grew up in rock and roll. I mean, I went to a million concerts in the 70s. You know, it's got Stones and The Who and Jay Giles and, you know, the MC5 and the Doors and everybody. And I always loved those guys, but I couldn't play guitar and I couldn't sing. I actually had a band where I sang for a while. And
what was the band called?
It's called the Alpha House Band. I just got out of college. It was some people were bumming around and
cool.
We were singing Alice Cooper and Rolling Stone songs. And
Nice.
most people would probably feel merciful. I was merciful that I gave up singing and took up poetry because I'm a very terrible singer. But
So you can at least speak your words.
But,
I guess.
But the Professor Surrealism thing, I just made it up in the early days. We had this coffee house that we've been running for years in Allston and Cambridge.
That's right,
Called
yeah.
Squawk Coffee House. It used to be called Naked City.
Okay.
And
Was there
one year I
controversy
called
there?
myself, I think 1990, I called myself the Professor of Surrealism. And then I met this beautiful British woman poet who did this great, incredible poetry. And she went back to England and she was writing like these 4-page letters every couple of weeks. And
love letters kind of.
I was writing back to her, and she was quoting Shakespeare and Keats and stuff. I said, "Wow!"
Beautiful.
And she called me the Professor, Professor Surrealist. And she didn't know I called myself that. She made that up herself. I mean,
So is that kindred spirits? Can great minds think alike?
I thought we were kindred spirits, and I was like,
And it didn't quite where I've been there.
well, she invited me over to London, and so I said, "Oh shit!" So I went over to London. And I said, "This is it. This beautiful." British woman, and
He's gonna invite me to
blonde
this
hair,
beautiful city,
and she invites me to London, and she's like got this rock and roll spirit, and she's
awesome.
I said, wow, this is like a dream come true. I get over there, and I spent 2 weeks with her, and she was a paranoid, crazy nutcase. It turned out she was absolutely out of her mind.
So it was all beautiful. it was all the idealized, because that's kind
She
of.
actually kicked me out of their apartment after the first week and had me stay with a bunch of squatters who took over a house in London, or like these young kids from Ireland. And I ended up going to a rave, the wildest party I've ever been in my life was a London rave, which I stumbled upon, and it was like, holy shit. And I wrote an article about it. It's on my website.
That's right. So tell us about that. That's like, you said that rock and roll spirit. You kind of just have that, the rock and roll spirit or the artist spirit where, like a lot, I think of these punk rock guys, like for me, it's like Henry Rollins and all these guys who did this travelogue. They kept these journals because not only were they playing these gigs and stuff, but part of this thing that kind of inspired their work was like you get into these weird scenarios, right? You're like traveling all around, and you know what I mean, like that whole the whole like weird scene you got into. Like you didn't know when you were kind of like.
Well, I didn't know a scene even existed. I didn't even know there's a whole army of squatters who are taking over all these buildings in London. The whole underground.
So did you feel like an outsider, and you were?
Well, I didn't. Yeah, but it was kind of cool. And and then he said, "Come to this party called a rave." And I said, "Holy shit!" There's like 500 people took over this whole school building, and they got a sound system and there's lights flaring, and like holy shit! It was like the wildest party I've ever been to in my life. It was just incredible. And it's like, and this is going on like every week. They're doing raves all over London.
What year was that?
1992.
Nice.
I wrote an article about it. It's in a magazine, and it's on my website. There's some pictures and stuff from it, and I took some photographs, and just it was just like. It's hard to even explain. It was just like.
What's your website? It's mcusimano.
Tripod.com.
.tripod.com.
Yeah, and I get a lot of stuff. I've put stuff up for years, actually.
Yeah, but what? Anything else from the? So you go to this rave, and then what do you do? It's stimuli overload.
Yeah.
So what do you? Are there things legally you cannot mention? You signed a release.
Well, there were things going on that other people are doing illegal. I didn't do anything. I did one bottle of beer is all I had. But it was it was a trip just watching what was going on.
But from a writing perspective, like I found here, it's interesting because you have that. You talk about the rhythms and the way you read your poetry, and then you have that your pattern of speech and stuff. And then when you read somebody's writing, it's a whole other thing. And I feel like it really puts people right there, But we can maybe they can check that out online, tease that story. But if there's any, there's lots of other stuff. But I'm like, yeah, Mick Cusimano goes to a rave in London, and so what? How didn't it? Does it last all night? Does it?
It was going on all night, but I actually had to leave like 4 a.m. because I had to fly out the next day, which I was kind of bummed out that I was like, I found this on the last day of London.
So it was the
instead
most.
of the first day,
It was going out with a bang, right?
Yeah. Right.
So what? So there's music playing. There's what kind of alternative types, counterculture types.
Yeah, young kids or
younger
rave scene
folks, the rave scene.
Well, I guess I was reading that like this whole underground scene had evolved a couple years earlier when there was some New Age people hanging around Stonehenge, and they camped out there for a few months, and finally the cops came and kicked them out. And what happened is the New Age people, the punks and the old hippies all coalesced and became this whole rave scene. That's how it evolved out of that. That's what I...
The hippies have sort of an easygoing nature, but they brought the drugs, and the punks are like self-destructive, and they want to wreck shit. So they
New Age people have this vision of this other world. Or I don't know.
So what is it? It was around Stonehenge, the actual like.
That's where it started. I think late '80s. I think when the New Age people get kicked out, then the punks and New Age and people and the hippies got together, and this whole rave underground scene kind of evolved out of that. That's
right. Yeah.
Understand.
So several times we've said, I know that's sort of a popular trope now. We've said several times underground. So what is that?
That was a real underground scene. I mean, the rave scene was. I mean, that was a totally alternative. I mean, all the bars are complaining because they're losing business because people are going to raves.
Yeah. So
100,000 people a week were going to raves.
Right. It's not a sanctioned. It's not.
It was totally unsanctioned at the time. Now I think they have like more clubs and it's more legal.
Right.
But
and they call it.
But back then it was a total outlaw thing. I only been to one of them, so I'm not an expert or anything.
But was one of them enough? Like,
that was cool.
Thinking about that now, the visuals or so what for that scene? So if you have punks and hippies and all this, like what kind of music is playing?
They
were
playing
rock
techno
and roll?
music.
Techno, there you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
Techno rock or whatever.
So I'm sure some drug activity. That's sort of, for better or worse, sort of seems to be synonymous, or at least was, as far as the whole rave thing. So you're part of that. So a couple things come up. We kept saying we've said a bunch of times: underground, outlaw. Sounds pretty badass.
And then later on, I started doing movies around 1999. Actually, first movie I did a little animation about Billy Barnum's poem, and I sent it to the Philippines International Film Festival, and it got accepted. I said, "Holy shit!" And I said, "That's pretty cool." And then they canceled the festival because somebody tried to overthrow the government. But then I started making more movies, and started. Besides animation, I started filming people, and one thing led to another. And I was doing a mermaid movie where I got a call from Lawrence Holloway. He wanted to collaborate on something. And I said, "Oh, come on by and help me film this mermaid movie tomorrow." And he got involved in that. And I met you guys, and we did "Don't Spill the Eggs," which is like the surrealist movie.
That's right.
The most surrealist movie ever made.
Well, it's interesting. It ties. I mean, we're jumping around a lot, but that's cool. It all kind of it all ends up sort of tying in, like, with you. Like, you're making these movies, which is, I'm not going to so much compare to a rave, but I know you've kind of mentioned, like, one of the things you really go for in trying to bring different types of people together for the live action movies is you've said, I read a piece on your site where you say you're trying to kind of recapture this feeling of childhood, this sense of play or something, right? There's sort of this spontaneity and different people kind of like coming together, and then the movies themselves, like in the case of like Don't Spill the Eggs, it's sort of people acting out different things and saying different lines from this actual surrealist poem, right, which you wrote. So it's each thing kind of like you said, you started doing cartoons for the poets, like doing the flyer, because you're a cartoonist, and then you say you did cartoons with the Beatles, and of course those guys are like, synonymous with rock and roll and sort of its own little, I guess, counterculture, but it became sort of a mainstream thing, but they're kind of become synonymous with sort of a drug culture and things like that, which ties in with the rave stuff and all this. but yeah, building off of one cartoonist into a poet, into then being a filmmaker based off of the poems, and then you didn't really you did do a band, but it didn't become a bigger thing. But then you take those lyrics and you start performing the poetry. I guess I'm interested about the and then you've said about the film festivals. We'll talk a little bit about the films, I guess, just because the overarching theme is, like you say, people. I think that's a good message to put out there, especially being part of the saying we're doing like the DIY arts thing. The notion that some would say for better or for worse, but like it's for better, and especially with the internet, anyone can put something out now. The notion that anybody can do this if you want to express yourself. You don't need 5 years experience or have gone to college have a degree in poetry or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like you just went and did it.
Yeah, I had no experience writing poetry. I never experienced making movies. Nobody encouraged me, gave me any money. I just said, I'll try making movies, and I just did. You know?
So did you have any, like, because people will wonder, I think even younger people, even me to some extent with certain creative things, you're still kind of like, did you have any doubts? Did you say, I want to be like someone, or did you just say, no, I'm Mick Cusimano, and I'm gonna do it as I do it, and I see these other poets and these other artists just doing what they do, and I'm just going to do it.
I think Vincent Price vanished all my doubts when I realized that I could try things I never done before.
What was it about Vincent Price? Because we didn't really speak.
Well, I just saw him, and it was just, I don't know. It was just
he was walking.
That was when I turned 30, and it was like the.
It was your turning point.
Yeah, it was a turning
Coming
point.
of age story.
Yeah.
Was it you were at some museum, and you see Vincent Price was just like.
He was doing
somewhere?
a commercial out on the steps outside the museum. We just happened to walk around the corner, and I run into him. I said, "Holy shit, that's Vincent Price!" You know? And that's just when I liked the things for real.
How does that tie? How does that?
At the same time when I was realizing I was 30 and I could do all these things I'd never done before.
Like you shouldn't just fuck around. You shouldn't doubt yourself. It's just kind of where I'm at. That's
But you can always doubt yourself, but you can try things
or do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Just do it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Because
you're building because people will say some people will not like poetry. I happen to dig what you're doing. Some people won't be into it. Some people won't be into. Some people only want big budget blockbuster movies or something, but I mean, what you're doing and what you've done is build a body of work. You know, I mean, you have sort of that like body of work. Yeah, and you said as far as the film festivals and stuff, that's another thing because we have our buddy Lawrence Holly and a bunch of other people who are sort of filmmakers, and it's kind of it's like as they say, the expression is kind of the digital paint never dries, and some people will be, for better or for worse. You know, it's very easy to get caught up and be tweaking and editing and sort of re-editing a movie, and well, now it's going to be, of course, there's no, they say progress, not perfection. There's no such thing as you're not going to make the perfect movie, but you want it to look good and sort of, and you do your thing with the movies, but it seems also I've said what I want to say, and then kind of like on to the next thing. And you've not it sort of just seems to be second nature for you to enter these film festivals, which can be, for some people, entering some sort of, if you call it a competition or something, because there's a lot of people, whether it's film or plenty of people, I know I have a ton of, high school poetry and stuff, that kind of just sits in a notebook and collects dust somewhere. And so I think it's one thing for somebody to make a piece of art. It's another thing to make it and then be like, yeah, I'm going to put it out in the world and we're going to try. Like, do you think it helped you not only to see these poets, you just went for it, but then you said early on you made something and it got accepted into you made the Billy Barnum piece and it got accepted into a film festival. So you're like, hey, this isn't that hard. Like, I'll just do it. Like,
well, it costs money to enter film festivals.
Well, that's right.
I've been in 75 film festivals in the last 10 years, but I've been turned down by hundreds more. I mean, I get turned down by Sundance every year. They get 12,000.
But didn't you also screen out of competition at a Sundance thing? Or no, cons.
And I was in a short film corner in Cannes with Don a couple years ago. Yeah.
That's right. So you went to France and stuff. Yeah. So tell us about some of the travels and stuff.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
And Dawn Rieger, who was an actress in the films and a friend of yours, not to bring a down note, but she passed away a few years ago, and you had that really cool memory and that experience. And I remember a personal thing is she said to me, she I was studying communications, and I was going to school, and then I was not going to school, and she said, see, instead of like some people in my family or whatever, you got to go back to school, she said, see, like, aren't you glad you quit school? You're doing it. You're you're acting in these movies, and you're doing this and that, and she said, like, you're just doing it, and it's nice to have it's nice to have a positive voice in that whole thing, to say you're not crazy to go and try something different. Or
well, Don is really important, because when I was doing animations, I started doing live action movies. I did a poetry movie called Poetry in a City, and then I just like, well, I'm gonna do some other things, and I came up with these other ideas, and her and a couple other poets came by and helped me work on these live action movies, and Don really helped out. I mean, I probably wouldn't have kept on doing live action movies if it wasn't for Dawn, because she came along. We did a mermaid movie, and she like acted in it, and she designed mermaid costumes, and she came up with props, and she was always encouraged me. And the whole rest of us, whenever we did stuff, she would show up with a whole bag.
That's right, and then also
for all the characters, and she was really believed in what you're doing, and she was just amazing,
Yeah, and then for us doing I mentioned doing the experimentally doing the film festival, where myself and Lawrence Ollie sort of took up the mantle of like, let's show some of our stuff, but let's also, there's this sort of pocket in New England and the surrounding areas of these interesting low budget filmmakers and interesting people. And let's screen them, So we took it to the Coolidge Corner Theater, the Somerville Theater, Brookline Access Television. We started out in the Out of the Blue Art Gallery, which is a small art gallery in Cambridge. I know you've done some poetry stuff, and the Stone Soup Poets is another group that I think you've done some stuff with. But Dawn Rieger, actually, she was like one of the champions, man. I think she came to like every single screening that we had, every single one. She was just into it, and you can't buy that kind of support, like you said. I mean, here we are doing our thing. I mean, you got to support each other, you know what I mean? Because just in general, man, and to make it a bigger thing in life, there's not a lot of support. There's a lot of cynical people who, why are you making a movie? Why are you a poet? What did you go to school? You don't know how to write? Who taught you how to write? You know what I mean? And it goes back to what you're saying, like, you just do it. You learn by doing.
She kept believing in all our movies, and she came to them, and help people out and bring costumes and act, and she'd be a comedian, she'd be a dramatic artist, and then I did an animation called Love at First Sight, and she did like the voices of Helen of Troy.
That's
and
right.
Stuff.
Wasn't that a Valentine's Day?
Yeah, and that we took. I got accepted in a Cannes Short Film Corner, a Cannes Film Festival. So her and I went over there and the showed over there, and we went to Cannes. We got 2 passes to the festival. We saw his movies. We saw Roger Corman when he had a big retrospective of his movies.
Another counterculture icon.
But,
you mean all these celebrities?
Peter Fonda,
Peter Fonda,
he was there
Easy
introducing
Rider.
him. Yeah, he
come on.
And so we got to hang out with them, and then we went to Paris. My friend Maria, who was a great woman, she took us around these parties. They have these like bridge parties on Thursday nights, where they have a footbridge in the summertime, and all the Americans and people in Paris just have a big party. They have a picnic in the middle of the bridge. They just set up a table, have wine and cheese.
Just outside, cool weather.
If you do it here in Boston, they probably bust you in a minute. but in Paris, they're just so cool about it. They like, and like she took us out to that. We're dancing around. There's like music playing. People are playing like flutes and guitars.
Is it really still like
around?
Well, it wasn't in 2015, but around there. I mean, is it still like they say, right? The city of love. Right?
Oh,
something
Paris
like
is
that.
still,
Is it still that romance? Like, is it just about the scenery, or is it the people, or?
Well, I met this beautiful woman there. I was actually,
or the women.
I was there in 2003. I got invited to be in a Surrealist art show in Paris, which is a long story. But I got there.
Tell us.
I met these guys. I went to Paris in '89 with some other poets, and we met this guy who had a little pamphlet called The New Surrealist, and I had a magazine called Underground Surrealist, and we exchanged them. And every year we'd some of these collages. I sent him my cartoons, and like 2003, I got a letter. How would that be in a Surrealist art show in Paris? I said, how many chances in life does an artist get offered a show in Paris?
And you were in what, Somerville in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I don't know. I hardly know these guys, but I went over there. I bought a plane ticket. I'll go over there. And like, here's like 15 Surrealist artists, and they introduced me as a full-fledged member of the group. And there's my painting hanging on the wall, and this gallery in Paris. I thought, holy shit, this is great. We were hanging out
Mick
like
Cusimano,
people.
recruiter to the Avengers, just they introduce you as a full-fledged member.
Yeah. And I met this woman from Ireland who was there, and she was really cute, and we hung out together and went to
What's
dinner.
that? Carousing with foreign ladies.
We're walking out,
It's
out
one of
the
the perks
Seine,
of being an
holding
artist.
hands and stuff. And I went back and saw her a couple of times, and she fell in love with another guy. But we're actually still friends. I just got a postcard from her.
That's cool.
She's a writer and performer, a really cool person. When I took Dawn back there. Maria took me and Dawn around to all these different places, and these art gallery openings and parties, and it was great, and like. Then we went to Con, me and Dawn, and then Dawn died about a month later. But she had the greatest time of her life there, which is great, And she, I was glad I took her there because I kind of rewarded her for supporting me for all those years. And she did.
That's awesome.
Don't Spill the Eggs with it. She did the monkey. She inspired the monkey movie. I think she has one scene in that, but did all these different things, like.
In the monkey movie, that was with Lawrence Holly.
Lawrence Holly dragged me down to the garment just. He said, "We got to buy this monkey suit to make."
He dragged you. He said, "We got to get a monkey suit."
Well, I want to make this monkey movie, and I'm talking about it for a long time, and then Dawn died, and I was all bummed out. I said, "Oh, I can't."
Right, you gotta find a way to
later,
go on.
Lawrence says, "Come on, we got to keep going on this. You want to start this movie? Let's go down there and let's do it." And he dragged me down to the garment district and bought the monkey suit, and then we started filming with Kent the next day, and it started snowballing, and monkey do, monkey don't.
Bunch of grown men
it's a movie,
running.
Yeah, it's about a guy who's a lab assistant who accidentally turns into a gorilla. So we had.
I hate when that happens.
I know, it happens all the time. So Lawrence is in a monkey suit, like running through Central Square. I get filming him running down the street and grabbing bananas out of your hand and all this stuff, and like. Just in broad daylight. He's jumping on tables and stuff. We did this great guerrilla theater.
Because guerrilla theater. Who do I have? Dio Polanski on? He's the puntastic guy. It's puntastic. So what do you think about that? Because I remember one of the things that you wanted to kind of experiment with the filming, or maybe one of the things you're interested in is that whole kind of like public performance thing, and what are those on the people who are looky-loo and people who are rubberneck and who are watching you film, and you didn't want to do like a candid camera kind of thing, but whether it's intentional or not, is that almost kind of bringing you back to that childhood kind of fun thing? Like, is it kind of fun to know that you're like, the mad scientist, so to speak, orchestrating this thing, and then there are these people like, what are they? Are they making a movie? What's that? Why is that guy in a Sasquatch suit running around?
Oh yeah, it was fun.
And I know a couple of times you got a few people. People will just be watching, and one of the perks of the low budget film thing is like people will watch and say, hey, is that a movie? And then you'll kind of say, hey, like, yeah, like, want to be in the movie? And then they'll just sort of be in the movie, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of late scenes in a movie where we're just filming in Central Square, and 3 or 4 people watch us, and said, we need some extra people, and they joined the movie, and they were chasing Lawrence down the street and everything. I mean, they just jumped right in, and we did that thing where Lawrence he's on the run because there's a bounty on his head, a $50,000 bounty for a girl loose in Cambridge. So he goes to speed dating. And he tries to get a date so he can get a woman to take him home and get him off the street. So he's sitting there on a date with these different women in his gorilla suit talking to him, and the woman, oh, do you like the movies? Yeah. Well, what do you like? Well, King Kong, Gorillas in the Mist, Planet of the Apes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we did this whole thing, and we had, a bunch of people came off the street and did that. We just threw them right in there.
They were the dates.
Yeah. Which is, that's kind of. I mean, there's some people are just walking by. We just like, hey, we were in a movie, and it's, yeah, sure, okay, yeah. So you're gonna date this girl in about 2 minutes. So we just somewhere I read somewhere that if you're an independent filmmaker, if you have no money like me, that if you can't get professional actors, use non-professional actors, but don't expect them to act. Just let them be themselves. So that's how I do it. Just let them be themselves.
Just to be real and catch those moments.
Here's the thing. Do this and do it by yourself, and whatever way you want to say it, and it comes out as real because it's the real people.
So this almost strikes me as it's almost so you did the cartoons, just print, and then you went into the animated movies, and then this is something like the monkey movie with Monkey Do, Monkey Don't, right? Also part of that is based off of another one of your poems. Part of that, right?
It was a monkey poem I wrote years ago.
You have that refrain, man. Monkey do, monkey don't.
Yeah.
And So now it's almost like you're making like live action cartoons, really sort of wacky. Don't you mention it's another sort of thing from way back in pop culture is the Keystone Cops and that kind of thing, like
Cops.
broad comedy stuff. So isn't that? It's
and people
like
chasing
that.
each other around in monkey suits and banana suits and all this stuff. And making people do crazy things, and they're going, "Don't spill the eggs," and all those things. And I realized later on that what I was doing subconsciously was I was doing animation all these years. When I started doing video, I didn't realize it. I was making my actors become cartoon characters.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
doing crazy things. And there's the only precedent for that is a guy named Frank Tashlin, who was a cartoonist from the 40s. He did some Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig movies and for Warner Brothers. Then he did live action movies. He did a bunch of Jerry Lewis movies. He did two of James Mansfield, and he did this wild, crazy stuff, Doris Day and stuff. And it was just crazy, wacky gags in his movies. And he was a cartoonist who became a live action filmmaker, which is very rare. But he's not that well known, but he did some really great stuff. And he's the only person I know who's like follow the same trajectory.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do you? What's his name again?
Frank Tashlin.
Frank. How do you spell the last name?
Tashlin. I just read a book about him. I did some research about him.
So he's out there somewhere.
Oh, you can find it. Yeah, he's dead, but you can find a lot of his movies on IMDb. He did quite a few movies actually.
Cool. So he's kind of you didn't meet him.
No.
But then you also, the other thing is, didn't you also, speaking of counterculture icons and kind of poets, writers, didn't you have a brief run-in with Hunter S. Thompson?
Yeah.
Get up to that microphone.
There was a Beat Generation conference in NYU back in '94, and they had Ginsberg and Kerouac and
Allen Ginsberg.
Ginsberg and Corso and Ferlinghetti and all these beat poets got together for the first time. They had a big 5-day conference, and I used my magazine to get a free press pass. And Hunter Thompson got up there with Ed Sanders, and it's like 2,000 people in the audience. And Hunter Thompson pulls out a pipe and starts smoking a bong on stage. And it's
too much applause, maybe?
Oh, people loved it. But
of course.
I mean, the NYU security cops aren't going to come over and bust a guy in front of 2,000 people.
Because he's friggin' Hunter S. Thompson.
What do you do? Yeah, he's Hunter S. Thompson. So
you get to be an icon. You get to do what you want, right? That's the kind of the dream, right?
Yeah.
Get paid to be an artist. Do what you want.
So afterwards, he was outside, and I had this cartoon magazine called Underground Surrealism. I gave it to him and said, "Hey, here's a copy of this." "Oh, thanks a lot, man." And all of a sudden, he's like swarmed by people like asked for autographs, pictures. It was just like
didn't you say you
like
got,
locusts,
you got to have kind of your moment with them right before.
Just for like people like
right?
all the fans were like locusts jumping all over him like 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
Like,
And this is before like Instagram and like Facebook and stuff. So they're and whip out a selfie, but they were doing photos and stuff, right? Like, taking photos and autographs and everything. So the magazine that you gave him was that was your own zine?
I published Underground Surrealist magazine. Yeah, I was published a lot of other magazines, but I published my own. Like 15 issues or something, or 18.
So what did that have in it? Cartoons, poetry?
Mostly cartoons, some poetry, mostly my cartoons and others. Some other cartoonists from around the world used to send me stuff.
Around the world?
Yeah, guys from England and stuff and France. They'd send me stuff and I'd publish them.
So I think that's cool, interesting being for people who don't remember a time before the internet, not to make not to put a timestamp on it, but I think it's fascinating. How do people from around the world even know that you have a zine?
That was because in the 80s and 90s there was a magazine called Fact Sheet 5. It was a guy in Schenectady. He was an engineer, and he put out a magazine where he would like review hundreds, maybe even thousands of zines from around the world. And I used to look them up all the time and say, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And I'd find magazines from Finland and Germany and Slovenia and
so
Russia.
all things
and
like
I would send them my cartoons. A lot of them would publish them, and they would send me their magazines. I could see their magazines, and they would review my magazine, but they would review theirs. So that's how I connected with all these other people. And I got published in like 100 magazines in like 5 years or something, all over the world. Like little zines are long gone.
So it's almost like one zine
reviewed them all, so that's how everybody could find out about everybody else. Because this Fact Sheet 5 went all over the world, so people bought it and looked at it and said, "Oh, there's magazines in Boston, there's magazines in California, there's magazines in." There was one guy in Leningrad, I think. He published my
Where's
magazines.
that? Leningrad?
And I sent him my cartoons. He translated them in Russian and published it there. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
We gotta get you on video. Someone's gotta do a documentary with you. We gotta do a long form thing. I don't know if you know how to. I mean, here you're not tooting your own horn. You're just telling these stories. I think it's fascinating. I don't know if you know how interesting it is to somebody, younger people or people in general. I don't know if people. I think that's the cool thing about you, though. And I think about people. You gotta surround yourself, like they say, oh, he fell in with the wrong crowd. It's kind of all about what crowd you surround yourself with, right? Like you fell in, you decide, hey, I like these poets. I'm gonna fall in with these. We met you because we decided to do a DIY film festival, and then we fall in with DIY films. When you say, just do it yourself, just go do it. And so was the whole thing with the zine, with doing the zine and doing it yourself. I'm trying to. We've jumped around a lot. Is that are you inspired to do a zine with your cartoons?
Well, I did
some poetry totally on your own.
Well, what happened is in the late '80s, I was sending cartoons out to local publishers.
And then you just say,
Boston,
fuck it, and I'll do it.
And they published a bunch of my cartoons, some of them different magazines. And this guy from Street Magazine had a get together where we got like 15 local publishers from Boston who were publishing magazines, and we had meetings every week, and we would show each other's different magazines and stuff. And I said, it's great, they're publishing my stuff, but I get published like once every 6 months. I said, well, I'll publish my own magazine. So I can.
Did you make money from when they published you?
No, nobody makes money. No, nobody makes money. They're lucky they even.
Is there a way to make money in the arts, Mick? Is there
not
a
with
way
publishing, that's for sure. No.
Not in publishing.
Well, there is, but I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so I started making my own
seedy
magazine
underbelly
called Underground Surrealists, and they were saying, you can't publish a magazine, you've never done it before. I said, well, so what? I just did it, And they were very upset at first because I had never done it before.
Who was upset? The guys who started their own? Oh.
I mean, like I say, people are always telling you, if you haven't done something you can't do it. People are always telling you, give me that message.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, who do you think you are?
And do you think that's just because they want to stay on top? They don't want more competition, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Now we're competing for any. None of these things make any money,
but he's still a starving artist.
Yeah, but
But you know what I mean, like a status or or I don't know.
Yeah, it's just I mean, you hear it from teachers and people on the street and
everywhere.
And if you go to job interviews, you've never done it before. You can never do this because you never, you have no experience.
Right.
Well, just don't do it.
Right.
I mean,
I've
done computer programming. I never did that before, and I bombed. That was terrible, absolutely awful. I got only Fs in Harvard. I ever took for a class because they were so bad. I mean, I was great at video and writing, but I got A's in all those classes. But
you've taken some Harvard courses, right?
Yeah, I've taken 16 graduate courses at Harvard Extension. Actually,
there you go.
I don't have a degree because it's too spread out, but that's why I learned a lot of video and different. I took a lot of.
But for people too who are like maybe bumming out about themselves and where they're at as far as credentials, like.
Yeah.
You don't need a degree with a capital D. You've taken these classes and you're a sharp guy and you went and said, I'm going to go. Because there's plenty of people, I mean, especially now, talking about my generation, millennials who have huge student debt and who have no, like the job prospects, there's like nothing. And there's plenty of people who have a degree and it's like, it's not worth the paper it's printed on, man.
Yeah.
Like, where you can't do anything with it. So, there are some people, there's big blockbuster filmmakers and writers and stuff, and so I guess if money is your only goal, there are much more. One of my favorites there, Kevin Smith, says, if you want certainty, get out of art.
Yeah,
But then a friend of mine said, if you want certainty, get out of life. Like, there's no certainty. You got to get out there and just like roll the dice. But I'm sure there's like safer bets. I'll get a degree in accounting and I'll be an accountant. And if you have a math brain, right, you can, like 1 + 1 is always going to be 2 or whatever. But and like something like writing, poetry, art, there's all these variables and stuff. So, but a lot of people will have a degree or try or do something to make money and then still not be happy. Like they just don't have that ambition to just do it. Like you said, you just went out and you just did it. And then it's cool for you to come on here, and I've heard you talk about it in other places, like the misnomer of like people would tell you if you don't have experience, you can't do it. Well, it's like a catch-22, man. Talking about acting, it's like the Screen Actors Guild, right? It's like to get into SAG, you have to have gotten the work, but you can't get the work until you're in the union. Right. So it becomes this sort of like, you have to find that loophole. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So if people are gonna look at you and hey, this is a filmmaker, this is a poet, he has his body of work, like. One day you're just a dude who wakes up and says, I'm going to do this. And so I guess, I don't know if there's a magic trick for you. People are looking for a magic trick. Like the thing that, did you have, not to, dig up stuff if you don't want to go there, but do you think, did you have parents or did you have people early on who, you said Vincent Price. Somehow Vincent Price in the 30th birthday was the
catalyst
that made you say, I can just do stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get to that though. Why do you not even know? Was it just magic? Is it just because you admired Vincent Price and here's a film icon and he's right in front of me and I can touch him? He's not on the screen, so like you can just go and be out in the world and just do things and.
Well, no, the concept of doing things I've never done before was just going on at the same time when I ran into him.
But
that was just kind of like seeing that was like on my 30th birthday was kind of a catalyst. I don't know.
This is on your 30th birthday.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of like when I would ask you about Don't Spill the Eggs, and I was saying, what? Here we are in Cambridge, Central Square, and we're saying, I think it's cool. Don't spill the eggs, but we were sort of trying to get to the bottom of like what is Don't Spill the Eggs.
Yeah, a lot of people were perplexed by that movie. Well, it was based on a poem. We went to New York City with a bunch of Billy Barnum and a bunch of poets. We did a show in Soho, and afterwards we went to the Metropolitan Museum and they had a surrealist art show, and they had always paintings of like Magritte and Dali and Picasso and stuff and Leonora Carrington,
classics.
And Billy Barnum's running around and he's writing poems about each painting he sees. I said, that's really cool.
As he looks at them, what is he writing them on his hand or something?
On paper or something.
Just feverishly writing.
If he's doing it, I should do that. So I took out a piece of paper and started writing impressions of different paintings I saw. And if you Don't Spill the Eggs, it's just a series of impressions about these paintings. And I wrote about it and I read it on stage and people, it was kind of a dud. But then I started filming people doing the lines and having, Karen Ostermecki dancing around and Dawn.
Because you got these ladies in scantily clad outfits and you
doing these poems and dancing around and stuff like that. And I added animation to it and it just kind of evolved into this. Well, it's the most surrealist movie I ever did. And I sent it to a dozen movie festivals in the U.S. and they all turned it down. Uh-huh. Then one day I got picked by the Golden Line Film Festival in Swaziland, Africa. They loved it. They wrote like a 2-page story, like, how great it was and how surrealist, and they're going to show it at this festival in Africa. I said, that's cool. So I was thinking of going there, and then I got picked by the Cyprus International Film Festival.
In Greece, right?
It's outside of Greece. The island of Cyprus.
For the same film. For eggs.
Yeah. And so me and Lee and Jessa from the coffee house went over there, and we showed the movie there, and we hung out with all these Greek filmmakers, and it was amazing. We're on the island of Cyprus, and we went, and we had the monkey movie as the next year, and we showed that, and we went back, and we went down the archaeological ruins, Roman ruins on the island, and, we went to the Nicosia, Cyprus, and museums. It was an amazing place, And I never would have been there if I hadn't, had my movie picked for that festival.
That's right.
Festivals. I mean, I barely knew where the island was, but so that was pretty cool going there.
Yeah. So even then saying I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get out in the world. With the impressions of the paintings, it makes me think of a lot of times. I remember in public school and stuff, and then I remember I took a film class where they had us do this too. They had like a photograph, different photographs. Doesn't matter. Well, I remember one of the photographs was there was like a little kid in a but he was in like a war out. He had like a big, like a war helmet and like a little like military uniform or something. Or it looked like there was like sort of like war wreckage going on around him and stuff. But that was just one of it. It was like different black and white photos. But the idea is like how you can convey a story with just an image. Do it in reverse. Like look at this photo and then tell what's the story, who is this person, what happens to them and stuff, your impressions. And so I wonder, you looking at these paintings and how does your quote unquote impressions of the painting become something like Don't Spill the Eggs? Do you just What does Mick Cusimano write? Like this, I like these colors, or the landscapes are good, or are you writing sort of free associative, sort of? Are you writing the poetry as you look at it?
Well, I was looking at the paintings. I wrote like a couple lines about each painting, which ended up in the movie. And Don't Spill the Eggs was based on, there was a picture of Salvador Dali. He had a house in Barcelona or something, or in Spain, and there was a big giant egg on his roof, and he's hanging out in front of it or something. So I said, that's great.
That's awesome. See, like that's kind of the crux of it.
That's where Don't Spill the Eggs came from.
Yeah,
it's the egg at Salvador Dali's roof.
I'm like a detective here with these interviews. That's I got to the I found out the origins
That's
like live on the show.
Yeah.
That's so his house had a giant egg.
Yeah, it still does. It's like
Humpty Dumpty or something.
Yeah,
like,
he just put a big egg on his roof.
So his house is still
it's
there.
in Spain. Yeah, it's a museum or something. Yeah.
Wow.
I've been to the Salvador Dali Museum in Florida, but I've never been to one in
It's Spain. Its own. Yeah, probably the one in Spain is more.
Probably pretty cool.
Prestigious.
The one in Florida is pretty amazing. It's got all these giant paintings. It's really pretty cool. It's in St. Petersburg.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So and these artists though too, you have an appreciation for all this graphic art and all the paintings and stuff. When did you did somebody introduce you to that? Like, because you said you started.
When I moved to Boston in '84. On my way out, I took some art classes at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I bought a couple art books, and one of them was a history of surrealism, and I knew nothing about it. I said, I'm going to take this with me because I'm going to be stuck in a hotel all
just
week.
Bought some books, and
I
it was before on demand. It was before internet. You can just waste your life on Facebook.
This is pretty cool, surrealist. I said, I wish I was a surrealist artist, and I was hoping to go to town and find some people to do some kind of surrealist collaboration. I went to MIT and saw some actors. And I tried talking about it. One guy was like standing in a bathroom reading poetry or something. And afterwards, I talked about it.
He was reading poetry in the bathroom?
In a bathtub on stage.
Oh, that was the act. It was like a...
Yeah, and I talked to him afterwards, and he wasn't interested. And then I walked into a bar in Boylston Street, and I saw Billy Barnum performing, this crazy poet with long white hair. And he was a true surrealist. And I said, holy shit. And I met these other poets from West Virginia. And they said, he's great. I said, yeah, he's really great. What's going on here? I never even knew what poetry was. And they said, and so we started writing poetry, and I invited them along, and Billy Barnum and this woman Cassara, and we started performing together in Harvard Square, and that's we did hundreds of shows, and that's how the whole group became the Barnum and Buddha Circus. We went to New York City and toured with 18 poets.
What was it called? The
Barnum and Buddha Poetry.
The Barnum and Buddha Poetry Circus. That's like, did we say about the Beatles? Didn't we say like? And you have a line, I think, in one of the movies. I don't know. Don't Spill the Eggs. Where you meant like the Magical Mystery Tour. Right? Am I jumping that?
Oh, that's an archaeology. It's stuck in the '60s.
That's right, and I have to.
Come to an end.
Maybe we should save that for later. But that's one of your popular ones for the performance poetry too.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing is, people think of poetry and they think of just like, I don't know, like Robert Frost or Sylvia Plath or something, and then you're introduced to like these outlaw poets, and I don't know if I think I asked you that at another time, and you said, well, there's some younger people who are doing it now. I wonder if maybe somewhere in some part of the internet or something you can find, I'm sure there is somewhere some scene for that whole thing. And I think in the 90s or something, MTV had a little bit of a, I forget who it was. There was something idiot. There was some woman who that I'm drawing a blank, and then Henry Rollins had sort of a spoken word, and a couple of these punk poets, and there was John Cooper Clarke, who was a kind of a punk poet who's kind of sounded like like an auctioneer. Like there was this kind of like a resurgence about it. I don't know if you really. I'm sure somewhere in there it's still like very much alive, and then of course Billy Barnum is very much himself alive, and so there's some scene. I just think it's cool. It's out there, and then I wonder, like, what is the life people think of touring rock bands? I guess if you're a touring poet, you don't have as much stuff to carry around.
No, that's very light, but there's no money. I mean, we played in Soho and Connecticut. We played.
So what do you do? Do you all travel together? Is it a band?
Well, we had one guy who was a professor in New Jersey, and he got us a gig for like $600 at New Jersey. I think it was some junior college. It was Bergen County Junior College, and we performed in front of his captive writing class. And we did Fire Meet This
They locked the door.
Yeah, and then we had like 500 kids watch us perform for like 2 hours, and we got paid $600. So that paid for our hotel and gas. So
that's pretty good.
So we kind of broke even. So that happened like 2 years in a row. So that's how we could get all the poets to travel together.
To break even, to kind of four-wall it.
There's a guy called Are You Out of It? He was a crazy poet, and he had a thing called Are You Out of It Day every year where poets got together and went to New York City and Toronto and stuff. But one year,
Are You Out of It was his name, yes.
Yeah. He was one of the early poets I met with Billy Barnum. It's another story altogether. But anyway, he decides to have Are You Out of It Day at midnight in Paterson, New Jersey. And
so was he a New York guy or a Boston guy?
He's in Boston. Well, he came from down south. Him and his twin brother, Dan Zermontai, his evil twin brother.
Wait a minute. Did he have a mustache? Like, is he evil? He did?
Well, yeah. They're both born at Halloween. It's a crazy.
They were both born on Halloween?
Yeah. They're twin brothers.
Oh, wow.
Twin brother poets. That's why I met when I first came to town and saw Billy Barnum. And we started hanging out. I did posters for him, and that's how we started performing with them. And we did a show in Boston Common. We had Tracy Chapman with us and stuff and everything. But anyway, a couple years later...
Tracy Chapman?
Yeah. Wow. Well, she was playing a doorway next to us in Harvard Square, and we were doing a show the next day. And we said, hey, you want to go perform with us? She said, yeah, because she had no other gig. It was the first gig she ever got.
That's interesting how musicians in sort of a rock crowd...
Well, we were doing poetry in one hallway in Harvard Square, and the next doorway she was playing... And she would get like 50 people watch her. We'd have nobody, 3 people watch poetry and walk away and horrified,
Horrified.
But anyway, we did a show in Paterson, New Jersey when we were on tour. And it was at midnight somehow because things got screwed up. Poets are just insane. But anyway, we ended up, 18 of us went, Deb Priestley and a bunch of us went down, Billy Barnum. We went down.
Deb Priestley.
She was on tour with us, yeah. So we went down to this park in Paterson, New Jersey, and started performing at midnight. And
so
the only people who are watching
secret...
us are like these these junkies and like street people and like street gangs and they're like watching these poets from Boston doing this crazy stuff and Billy Barnum's jumping around dancing and they're like, what the hell is this? So we freaked them out totally. But it was like the most insane scene you could imagine.
It was like a secret show.
It was, yeah.
Unannounced.
Playing to like these crazy street people. It was like they were just like they're drinking whiskey and like smoking crack and they're looking at us like what? They wouldn't even attack us because we were crazier than they were. It's like what's this? What is this? Spoken word? Is this free speech? I said, yeah, it's poetry. And they're just like shaking their heads, and they're. Oh my God, it was crazy.
Isn't that the way though, man? That's that's as he said, like the expression, hey man, like you read about in the books, man. Like I read about in the Outlaw Bible of American poetry, man, curated by that Alan Kaufman. Like that's the type of stuff that I read about, and you like lived it, man. Like it's just this dirty sort of like weird thing, just embracing sort of this free expression. So I wonder, like, where is that line of poetry, spoken word? You talk about the meter and stuff, but then I'm sure also at least one of those guys probably just sort of gets up on the soapbox and is just sort of shouting something or other, it's just all under that poetry banner, I think, right? Like,
well, I went to a lot of poetry readings early on when we were still performing and stuff.
Like, what counts? I guess. People wonder what counts as poetry, what counts as, within that structure. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. But my first movie actually was I think it was 99 or 2000. No, maybe 2005. I did it. My first video. I had a video camera, and I made a movie called Poetry in a City. Like I was sitting out. Always poetry readings, and poets are sitting in his bars and his restaurants reading poetry to each other, but nobody else hears it, and it's kind of insulated. And I said, well, I want to take poetry out of these, open mics and take it in the city. So I found 25 poets and went all over Boston and filmed them outside on the streets, by the river, on bridges, all over the place. And it was Billy Barnum and all these other poets, C.C.R. Chagrin and stuff like that. And I even got a woman from Paris to do it and stuff. And
Paris keeps coming up.
Well, I filmed her in Paris and put it in a movie later. But I did a thing called Poetry in a City. So I took all these poets in a city and filmed them all together and made a whole like collage 15-minute movie, which I think it might be up on my website. I don't know, but and that was my first video, and then live action video, and then I met Dawn and started making other movies.
How did you meet Dawn?
It was at a party actually, and I think I had seen her around the poetry scene. I really didn't know her, and it turned out we both taken a video class together the next semester at Harvard, and after that we started collaborating. And I said, I'm shooting this video, and she said, I'll come by and act for you and do the camera. And then she started getting involved, and we started working.
It was
together.
It's like you didn't even have, I'll come by and do that. Because
she actually, I was reading at a coffee house after the class was over about a month later, and it was in Harvard Square. It's this church, and the window was open. I was reading, and she heard my voice and came walking inside. I said, I heard your voice. I heard you reading poetry. I just want to say hello. I said, hey.
That unmistakable Mick Cusimano.
Yeah, but she was
voice.
just walking by, and I said, I'm shooting this movie on Saturday, and I need some help with the camera and stuff. And she said, I'll help you. And she got, but just by accident, she walked by and became involved in my movies, and then she became a very major, major
that's
part
the
of
beautiful,
it.
Isn't that the beautiful thing as far as collaborating and
Yeah.
stuff? Because just those people, when you say, hey, can you help me out? I can't offer you any money or much of anything.
Well, this other guy, Steve. Remember that funny little guy, Steve, who was in a bunch of my movies and Don't Spill the Eggs?
Steve.
Steve Burstein. He was like chasing
Maybe.
out the eggs and stuff. You know, you remember him. But anyway, he was at the coffee house at the same time, and I said, I'm looking for people to doing this movie like this weekend. And he goes, oh, we'll do it. And it turned out that him and Don had performed in theater like 25 years earlier together.
Wow, I never knew that.
And I didn't know either, And I put him in the Mermaid movie, and it was the first day he ever performed, and he did this crazy scene, when the mermaid's on stage, it's, where'd the mermaid come from? It's got to be a costume, it's unless somebody's dabbling in God's domain. I mean, he did the horror thing. It was very funny,
He's a freak of nature.
Yeah.
So explain for that the mermaid costumes. You said Dawn did.
Oh, she did all the costumes. Yeah.
And that was kind of like sexy, like dangerous. Like weren't they on the beach, like outside or something? And
well, we filmed this. Yeah, we filmed outside up in the North Shore. Actually, we'd filmed Don't Spill the Eggs and all these other movies in Cambridge. And this one guy, Chip, who played the newsman, he says, "Why don't you film up in North Shore somewhere?" And I said, "Or by the ocean." I said, "Well, that's a good idea, but what can I do in the North Shore that I can't do in Cambridge? I mean, I have to come up with an idea to drag all those people up there,
Right.
all the way up to the beach. I have to have a
story.
reason. What can I do in the North Shore that I couldn't do here? I could have a beach party, but that's all right." And I said, "Oh, maybe I know. I could have mermaids." And
you thought of that long before you had the costumes or anything. It all sort of just came
yeah.
together with the idea.
Yeah.
Like that, you come up with an idea and it'll inspire. It'll set something in
just
motion.
by this guy's suggesting to change the location, let's go to the beach. I said, well, what can I do on the beach? Well, I'll have mermaids come out of the water. That'd be unique, And so we did that. So we went up there.
Like a splash.
And we're getting ready to go on the beach, and there's all these big yellow lines, ribbons on the cops had put up saying beach is closed because there was a mini hurricane that just Hurricane Bill was going on. It was still crashing water against the shore, and it was closed for an hour or so. I said, what are we gonna do? We got a camera up here. We got a whole crew, and so I filmed the people hanging outside the yellow ribbons where the cops are, and I used that in the movie, saying that that beach was closed because mermaids were spotted on shore. So even though it was a real life thing, I made it part of the movie, and then we filmed the mermaids on the shore,
Right.
and
Using what you have.
yeah, and then
Indie filmmaking.
yeah, and then we went down to New England Aquarium, and
But
we got kicked out of there because they said Karen was too scantily clad.
Nice. That's kind of what I was saying.
For
Yeah.
a family museum, She was a mermaid,
Yeah. So you have the outfits, and then you had them kind of on the they were laying on the beach, right?
Yeah.
It was Karen, and then who were
Karen Jane Chakrabarty, who was a great actress from England, and then Sarah Pearlstein was the third one, Yeah.
So what are you thinking when you, not to get salacious, but what do you, so you get this movie, no, because it's cool, you get these actresses, they get the cool costumes that Dawn explained, so it's what was the process with it was like a mermaid fin thing, like people would know, and so what was it like a zip, zipped up, or what did they...
No, it was just
or draped over
draped
them,
over
or
them,
something
yeah.
like
And
that?
they were all laying on the sand, and like me and Don and a bunch of other people discovered the mermaids. Oh, what's this mermaids? Well, they go wash up on shore. And
Yeah,
they said,
yeah.
yeah, we came out of the ocean and stuff. And then Marcus comes along as the immigration
Marcus
agent.
Marcus Surrealism, right?
Yeah,
Isn't he?
right. So he's the immigration agent, and he's busting the mermaids for being illegal aliens. They don't have passports. He tries to arrest them. He tries roping them up and arresting them. And we beat him up and push him out of the way. And I kidnap one of the mermaids, Karen, and take her home with me. And then one thing leads to another.
Oh, wait a minute. Explain that. One thing led to another.
Well, the three mermaids supposed to go back in the ocean. And then Karen gets chased by a shark. She runs back on the beach. And she goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, why don't you come on with me? So I put her on an ice cream truck.
Of course.
Which we filmed. Don came up with the idea of getting this guy in an ice cream truck. And we filmed us taking her around the ice cream truck. And we took her back from the North Shore to Boston. And then she's laying on the ground. And she can't move. And Don goes, what? You put her in an ice cream truck. She's frozen. She's like a mermaid popsicle, He said, what'd you bring her back for? So I'm going to keep her. I don't know what else to do with her, So I bring her home with me.
Did you have was that just in the movie, or did you have a real ice cream truck?
We had a real ice cream truck, yeah.
Did you play the music?
Yeah. Yeah, Don found a guy, so we met him in Cambridge, and we filmed the scene where we put him on the truck, put her on Karen on the truck, and I took her off. And then I filmed him going away with the music the chimes and stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was pretty neat, because he had to have a device for how I got the mermaid from the North Shore back to Boston. So
right,
that was how,
because you did stick to the notion of she would have to stay in the water or a cold thing.
And I said, well, put her in a bathtub. And Don says, we don't have a bathtub. All we got is a shower. So I don't know what to do. Put her in a pool. We don't have a pool. Well, we'll have to put her in an aquarium. So we tried to put her in an aquarium. And so you can stay in the fish tank overnight, and then the shark goes by, and she goes, "Fuck you! I ain't going in the shark."
So not to say that I or anyone really you would think it was like a shocking thing, but then there's the thing about artists, doing I don't know shocking things or whatever. It's like it's kind of funny because I don't think she was. It was like a 2-piece outfit or something, right? So what is it? Karen went to the aquarium and the stuffed shirts thought that
we went there filming.
She was too scantily clad. Is that what it was?
For a family museum, they said.
A family museum.
Yeah, they kicked us out.
Which is you could probably somewhere find some kind of some sort of depiction of. I don't know, a female, something similar. If you went to an art museum, or
yeah.
I don't know. It's all about, and they let kids in there. It's all about context, I guess, which is true about art.
Yeah.
Anyway, like what the context is. But so do you kind of see yourself just because I know some of our friends like D.L. Polanski, some other people, whether or not they feel like, I don't know, just strapped for resources or ideas, like they kind of decide I'm going to take a break from movies, or I'm just not into movies as much, or I like the immediacy of doing a drawing or whatever. Do you kind of see yourself just doing some of the stuff, like doing the movies just kind of indefinitely? You just dig the expression of it and getting people together.
Yeah, I don't need money to do it. I just as long as I can get people to be in my movies, I can make them.
People.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing I wanted to like with somebody like Don or any of these people. Like, that's kind of the amazing thing is when you can get somebody when you're like, oh man, I need like help with my movie, and they're just like, when? Like, I'm there. You know what I mean? Like when you typically get those cynics who are like,
Well, in the early days, I used to use poets in my movies.
How did that work? You mentioned about the weird schedules of poets and the reliability.
Poets, first of all, they never show up on time, if they show up at all. If they do show up, if you tell them to go right, they'll go left, they'll go backwards, they'll stand on their head, do anything else except what you tell them to do. Poets are just anarchists, But if they're on, these are poets who get up on stage and read their most private, personal things in front of hundreds of people at poetry readings. So they'll do the craziest. Right. They'll be authentic and do wild things and be great actors. Sometimes they can do amazing things and they're not afraid to do anything.
Because they don't really have that censor. Yeah.
So that way they sometimes give great performances, but they got to show up first. But that doesn't much happen. But so it's a hit or miss. But it's
Yeah,
but you can't control them. It's like there's no way you can like. rein them in.
Catch them in their natural state.
Yeah, right.
So that's so. How did you did watching these poets? You say they'll read the most personal stuff on stage. Did you watch some of these guys and go like, wow, that's like.
Well, I knew these poets from being on the scene. I'd see them all the time with different things, and I would, when I do different movies, I said, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" Yeah, okay, and then I just bring them in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'd seen them and I knew what they could do, and I just put them in different roles, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And probably using less poets lately, but you know, in the early days, that's the only people I really knew was the poets.
Right. So when do you wow, we got
they were
kids
there.
running around. Yeah, some little nice family moved in recently here. But I guess the thing we haven't really. So you mentioned the coffee house, Squawk Coffee House, and as far as the poets and stuff, and that's a big centerpiece for you that maybe you want to let people know about. Did you fall into that, or did you co-found that?
I co-founded it with like 3 or 4 other people back in 1990. We started on Alston in a hallway, and it was a hallway. They rented a little room where they have like an art gallery or something, and all these little shops. They had like magazine shops and clothing shops. They were like alternative places, and they all closed at 5 or 6 o'clock. Well, at 8 o'clock, we would put on a coffee house up there in the hallway, and have musicians and poets there performing. And nobody knew about it because everybody else was gone, so it's kind of invisible. So you had like 100 people a night showing up there, like doing poetry and reading and drinking whiskey and. So
it was like an underground.
It was totally underground, yeah. And somebody squealed at it, the cops, and told them that they were going on. They came by and demanded an entertainment license and stuff. It lasted about 2 years, and we had to move over to Cambridge.
So even that, you got to go legal. You got to do.
Well, we ended up moving to Cambridge. You know, we went to a different church and stuff. We did it there instead. But it kind of started as that, and it's still kind of going to this day. It's a little more intermittent. But we had, in the early days, it was like, you know, a lot of the poets we performed with were in one corner and the musicians in the other, and it took a few weeks before they even interacted with each other. But that ended up one of the few venues where poets and musicians both played. And you hear poets, a couple poets during the night, and a couple of musicians, a couple of guitar players, and you know, you didn't have just, most places are just one or the other, and they never do the twain mix. You know,
I think that's a cool way though to keep an audience, right? Because mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe people who are into the poets come for the poets, but then hey, let's whip some music on you, or vice versa. You know. Didn't you have a bunch of variety acts? Didn't you? Who's the girl, Jenny the juggler, that you had?
She used to come to the coffee house, yeah.
She's like this cute girl that does like juggling.
She
and
still does it, yeah. She does it professionally.
Yeah. She's like a local character. Yeah. She's in Boston still? Or
yeah.
She tours around?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about some of the other acts? Just any standout stuff over the years? How long have you been doing it? It must be a long
since
time.
1990.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, quite a long time.
Does it all kind of, not to say there's any substances, but does it all sort of blur together eventually, like those acts sort of blur together?
Well, some of them. I mean, this one, there was a great band called Dagmar came around for a while. There was a guy and a woman who were really amazing. They were great. They should have been discovered. I mean, they were so electric. He played in Harvard Square. In fact, I just happened to have my video camera, and I videotaped the first show, and it did at Harvard Square. And like within minutes, 100 people were hanging around watching them, and just like mesmerized. You know, but, and they had CDs out, and they played in the subways in New York and all this stuff.
Dagmar.
Yeah, they were really great. This woman, she's the insect goddess. She had this great costume.
The insect goddess?
Yeah.
I like how you gloss over these things. Like, no one in the audience here for the show will not.
She's a beautiful blonde, and she sang, and she had this like aviator hat on with looked like a bug's head, you know, and it was like.
So a beautiful blonde.
She had his wings on. She looked like an insect, but. You know, some people like to laugh at her, but she was so stunning and dramatic, and she was really cool. And the guy, Jim, played guitar, and they were the band, you know, and they were. I mean,
she was like really the singer.
Cool. They galvanized all kinds of people. I mean, they were so cool. And
they were like performing coffee houses and on the street, and
I think they spent like a year playing in subways in New York City, and then they came to Boston and played coffee houses and did shows, and they all over the place. Had CDs, 3 or 4 CDs out, which I have a couple of them, which I use the music in my movies still.
That's right. I think that's probably where I heard of them. Yeah.
They were one of the great bands, and yeah.
Cool.
Have you ever had any fire performers, like a fire spinner or something like that? I've seen some people do that. You know, a girl who does
you
that.
can't do it inside a
Can't
church,
do it
a
inside?
wooden church. No.
In a church.
Well, some of the jugglers, like Jenny and some of the other, one time we had jesters, jugglers, and clowns just come every week and hang out, and they would juggle stuff, and you know,
clowns just come and hang. Squaw Coffee House, the place, you know, clowns just come and hang out. You know.
Yeah. I mean, they would do fire juggling outside, not in a coffee house,
Outside.
at different parties and stuff. But actually, on the year of the millennium, on New Year's Day, the first day of the millennium, one of the jugglers Jenny the juggler had a party at her house in Brighton. It was like 2000, January 1st. And that night, all these jesters, jugglers, and clowns all got together and had a party. And they were like getting drunk and like showing out their obscene tattoos. And they were like standing on their heads and they're trying to outdo each other. And like, you know, one guy was like a pirate and he started jabbing people with his sword. So they started.
What was it? What kind of sword?
It was a fake sword, but he was like he was a clown, but he was playing a pirate that night, and everybody hated him, and they threw eggs at his van and away.
So that's a big time Hollywood movie premise.
Like this crazy
clowns versus pirates.
I did a cartoon about it called The Apocalypse of Clowns. It was like, you know, instead of the world ending, it was like apocalypse of clowns happening that night. It was like the first day of the new millennium, so it was this wild clown party, you know.
That's so.
They're all drunk and they're falling over.
Drunk clowns? Yeah. Were they in full makeup?
Oh yeah.
Because as much of a
standing on their heads, getting their shirts off, they're like, you know, juggling stuff. They're just like they're unhinged.
You go into these situations as like the straight man, I think, and just absorb it so that later it can become a cartoon or a piece of writing or something, or base it off into a movie. Is there a big society of clowns in the Boston area that will come to a coffee house like that? Or like,
well, they did it for a while. They're still around. I've seen them at various events. In fact, I do caricatures as a sideline. That's the only way I ever make money as an artist.
That's right. Didn't you get something today? Right?
Like some of the jugglers I see at some of my events, you know, they like Jenny and some of the other ones will be hired for the same event, you know, and, you know, private parties and corporate gigs. And I did a corporate gig yesterday, actually, you know, on the North Shore, you know.
So was that like a private, like sort of a function or something?
Yeah,
like
it's like a company has like an annual party for their employees or something, and they'll hire a couple of caricature artists.
And you'll draw
people's, draw caricatures.
So because another thing with caricatures, how quickly can you do that?
If I do black and white, I do like 12, 15 people an hour, you know.
Wow. So do you charge by that? Is that just by the person or the hour?
I get hired by agencies. I get like $75, $100 an hour, sometimes a little more, you know. So it's kind of cool. So
if there's somebody like listening who wants, if they can do caricature, and they want to like, so they just look up like
look at my name under caricatures. You'll find, I got a website.
Mick Cusimano.
Yeah.
But what if they want to they want to get an agent to do those events? Is it just an art agent or a caricature agent specifically?
Entertainment agencies. There's about 4 or 5 of them that I belong to that they hire me every now and then. One of them I haven't got a gig in over 2 years, but I saw the owner the other day. And other ones some of them are slowed down. Other ones lately hire me for 3 gigs, but in other ones I hear for like once a year. It's just it's kind of a hit or miss thing. And there's websites.
So you just get a phone. You just get a phone call.
Yeah. Some people just Google me and if I say, "Oh, caricatures! You do caricatures for parties?"
Well, the other thing we should mention is you have an association with the big. It's the sort of New England film and video coverage. This magazine.
Imagine Magazine. Oh yeah.
Imagine Magazine with Carol Patton, I think, who also does CP Casting, which is a big film casting place and acting place here in the Boston area. So this is going to be almost the definitive Cusimano. Do a little bit more. We got the definitive Cusimano because I know that's been a big part for you. I think
I've been doing cartoons for him for the last 15 years.
Yeah, you do.
Imagine Magazine's it's a local Cambridge magazine about the local film industry, and Carol Patton, who founded it, is 10, 15 years ago, nobody made movies in Boston because they're like Teamsters are shaking people down and this and that. She came up with a vision that we're going to make this a film town, and she fought to get the tax credits due, and that's why all these movies, The Departed and Ghostbusters and American Hustle, all these movies, they didn't come to town by accident. They came to town because she deliberately went out and made these tax credits happen and got other people involved in it too.
Right, creates an incentive.
And it's brought hundreds of millions of dollars to Boston, and the New England area.
Right, because as
she does a magazine about it. She talks about the film industry every month, and I do a comic strip for her every month, which is pretty cool. And it's
what's it called?
Imagine magazine.
Yeah, but isn't the strip like Imagination or something?
Yeah,
right?
My strip's called Imagination, but you can look at free copies. It's imaginenews.com. You can look at free copies of the magazine on their website. And it tells you everything that's going on locally, film festivals, who's making what new movies, and new
little
producers.
pieces on the local filmmakers, and then the big stuff that's coming here.
Yeah.
So do you have you have an in then? You have it's a regular comic strip, and they can see your cartoons.
Yeah.
And what's like some of the stuff that you do? Is it always stuff that has to do with the film?
It's something to do with the film industry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a thing about Fellini's movie, La Dolce Vita, recently. I was showing a picture. I was showing different scenes of, like, famous scenes from movies. I showed Rocky running up the steps of the Philadelphia Arts.
Right. Lawrence Holly, actually, when he was in Philadelphia a long time ago, he was trying to track down the Rocky statue, but I think for some reason at the time they had moved it. Or
it used to be on top of the steps where the movie was, and now it's down at the bottom of the steps in the corner. Like, you can still see it, but it's the museum said it wasn't real art.
And I also that's what it was.
I don't know. It was a little
pop culture
political thing,
Pop culture versus high culture.
Yeah.
I also saw a thing on like Facebook, a story that was going around where some of these kids visited the the steps.
Yeah.
And they ran into Stallone, like the real Sylvester Stallone was. I don't know if he was scouting out for there's a new Rocky that's going to come out where it's going to be Apollo Creed's kid is training.
Right, yeah.
Where Rocky's going to be the trainer. I think it's just called Creed.
Yeah. Right.
But that's cool, man. So yeah, the cartoons in the strip, and then do you occasionally, do you kind of have an in if you want to get a little article in there, or do you ever
I get a free ad every month for doing a cartoon because they don't make any money, so they don't pay me. So I get a free ad, so I get to plug all my movies.
That's good.
I just did this Cleopatra movie. I've been plugging that. Search for Cleopatra's Crown, which I showed at the.
How was that?
Armory.
What did you show?
I showed it at the Armory a couple months ago, actually. Some real theater I showed it too.
Mm-hmm. You do the open screen, right?
Yeah.
Which is these guys do sort of like an open mic for films.
I haven't been there in a couple of years. I used to go to a lot before, but it's in Coolidge Corner now, I guess. It's a lot of the way, yeah.
But who did the because another thing I saw the pictures online for Cleopatra and who did the costumes for
this woman Alexandra, she's a fashion student. She's a friend of Gosha, who's an actress who she's been modeling for. Gosha's been modeling for her for years. All kinds of different costumes she comes up with. And I was working on this movie. Well, it was originally called The Diploma Repo Man, where Gosha is a grad student. She's $80,000. She hasn't paid her student loans in 6 months. She's $80,000 behind. And Marcus comes along as the villain again. He says, I work for the loan company. If you don't pay off your student loans, $80,000 in 24 hours, we're going to repossess your diploma. We're going to tow your diploma away. So all of a sudden she's freaking out, and I'm her old professor, and she runs into me, and she asks me to help her find schemes to make money. So we tried that, and then we found
that's a Pandora's box.
Yeah. Well, that and then the Crown of Cleopatra, which was discovered by Napoleon, ends up in Boston, and it gets lost, and because they think it's a piece of junk, and everybody in town's looking for it. It's worth $20 million, so everybody's on a treasure hunt to find the Crown of Cleopatra. So that was my latest movie, and that's
that seems to be a theme that you have where there's some event that gets set in motion where it incites the city into a sort of a frenzy. Like there's a quest, and everybody wants to get this one thing, and there's always a thing of like there's one group of people, and then there's sort of like the man. There's the corporate person that shows up and said, "Hey, we're gonna take that," or "We want that," or whatever.
There's a girl on the loose in Cambridge.
Yeah. Do you notice that as a theme? Like, do you?
Well, you gotta find a catalyst to make a story. You have to have some kind of you gotta have something for people.
Right. Something that moves it into action.
Makes people do something. All of a sudden, you got to pay off a student loan in 24 hours. That forces them to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Cleopatra, she had this big headpiece and this whole kind of glittery cape and this whole visual. Like, describe that a little for people who can't see that visual.
It's an amazing costume. What I did the diploma repo thing actually 2 years ago, and I tried it.
Footage?
Yeah. And I took a screenwriting class, and I was trying to write the second half of the movie, and I came up with all these clunkers. Then I was at a party, and this woman who's a designer who I knew that Gosha had modeled for, I said, "Hey, can you make a Cleopatra costume? I can do this thing about Cleopatra's crown." And I said, "Maybe you can make a crown for me so I can use it in my movie." And she comes up with this amazing costume, which you saw. It's like...
the real deal.
It's like cloth and a helmet.
Because that's her thing, right?
The crown, And this is and I just get a call from Gosha. She goes, "Come down to the harbor, bring your video camera." And I go down to the harbor, and she's standing on this table with this Cleopatra costume on, looking over the harbor. And it was amazing. And we got all this footage. I said, this is going to be something. This is like, wow.
Do you realize I've outdone myself? Because they say it, right? Surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. I knew I was hoping to get a crown. I didn't expect her to do the whole. Right. I mean, it's a real intricate.
You'd be happy with the Burger King.
Amazing crown.
Burger King crown.
Yeah, this is like really. She did an incredible job.
Wow, man! And just for free, just like a favor.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Can you tell me a little bit about? It's pronounced Gosha? Yeah.
You work with her.
So right. We're in a few movies. The lovely actress and I guess model, right? She's doing some runway stuff. You said. And can you continue with lots of these parties, Mick? Lots of beautiful women at these parties. Different networking events you go to lots of events and things. Like, so how did she kind of get involved in some of these movies, if you want to?
A friend of mine, another Polish guy, knew her, and we saw her at Marcus's house. It was an open studio, and he introduced me to her.
Paris Hilton was she was like,
she looked like Paris
look-alike.
Yeah. So he introduced me to him. He said, "You should be in Mick's movies." And he said, "She just made a mermaid movie." She goes, "I'd like to be in a mermaid movie." I said, "Well, I just finished it already, And then she kept bugging me, and I said, "Well, wait a minute. I actually have a scene where somebody reports a mermaid on the Boston Harbor." And so I did. Dawn and I took her down with Karen Ostermecki, and we dressed her in a mermaid thing and put her on the wall by the harbor and filmed her and put that in a mermaid movie. It fit right in. So she became the fourth mermaid.
Shoehorned in.
I mean, like the first.
The efforts men shall go for a beautiful woman to be part of their art.
Well, when I first made the mermaid movie, I was going to have one mermaid.
I'm with you.
And I almost had 6 mermaids. Every woman I knew wanted to be a mermaid in my movie.
What do you think is the the idolization that the mermaid? Was it the little mermaid?
It's mythological.
Splash. It's the mythological. The epic. But you don't see guys wanting it. But what is the next movie going to be about centaurs and these half, half human, half creature things? What about the merman? No mermen.
No.
Like in Zoolander, I'm a merman. But there's something beautiful about it. I don't know. That's cool. But gosh, it's been in a bunch of the movies.
Yeah.
And I mentioned about the networking thing. That's another important thing to put out there for people. I think for young people too, like you have your YouTube, which, do we know what your YouTube is? That's also
Cusimano or Mick Cusimano. Just look me up.
Look you up.
I'm on YouTube and Facebook. Yeah.
MickCusimano.
Yeah.
But to put your stuff up on YouTube, but also to get out into the world, because you were one of the first guys I think myself and Lawrence really saw. That's like, oh, he's kind of like going to all of the there's various film parties and networking events, and I know there were those guys, the Production Live guys who would come out and they interviewed us for our festival, but they've also interviewed you several times and different ways to kind of get yourself out there. I'm seeing you pop up in the you know, in the press and stuff, and you're going to these things. Remember, we went to some. There was some kind of mixer or something in Boston. There was like a DJ and colored lights, and it was a while ago. But I mean, how do you find those? You get little publicity, little word of mouth. You give out your big thing
tells you about what's going on,
and your big thing is
always other people who are networking, and that's something. I'm a terrible salesman, but in networking, my father, who just passed away a couple years ago, I was almost 11 kids. My father was always a great networker. They didn't use the word back then, but he was a genius at it, and I just kind of picked it up from him, I think.
Because the other thing I was going to say, you always have those, no shortage of those little posters, those one-sheet little posters.
Well, once you go to like 75 film festivals, you learn to go prepared. All these people show up and say, gee, I got a movie playing, but I don't have any cards. Or anything.
People don't know.
Wait a minute. So I make up cards. I know when my movie's playing. It's playing at 7:15 on Friday afternoon. And I know that before I fly out there or something. So I make posters saying, come see my movie. This is where it's playing, and there's a website. And so I bring it with me, so I go to a festival and I can hand it out, and I come prepared. I mean, after a while, you'd be dumb not to do that after a while. You got to figure this out.
People don't know. They think like, go to my, go to my Facebook page and just remember it. And after and even if you're have the best intentions. After you've seen 12 movies, how are you gonna remember that?
Yeah.
So you put it in people's hands, man. And I mean, do you get a response from that? Do you think people, they put it in their pocket, they come to the screenings?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes they will.
I think like 35 people came to Cleopatra opening last year, winter. So and that was mostly from Facebook. Sending out invites or posters I gave people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a lot of. I remember my buddy Rod Weber is a filmmaker. Well, a lot of film festivals are just like people handing out cards.
Yeah.
Because everybody's. Well, that's the game. You said about you're a terrible salesman, but you're...
Well, you meet other filmmakers, and you're all trying to promote your own movies and hand out cards or whatever, what you're doing, which is good. I mean, you see what other people are doing, and,
Have you seen, traction from any... Well, you screened a bunch of times, and you screened out of competition. You said it's hard to make money.
Short films don't make money. I went to France a year and a half ago to Clermont-Ferrand, which is the biggest short film festival in the world. And they have 8,000 submissions, and I think they pick like 800 movies, and they show short films in 5 different theaters all day long for a week.
Yeah.
In this little town in south of France, and 160,000 people come to this town every year to watch these movies. It's incredible. Huge lines of people.
So the fact that people will leave, because the other thing, the fact that people will leave their house to even see a movie now.
These people travel all over to Europe, even from America, to go to this festival to see these movies. They're all unknown filmmakers. They're all short films from all over the world.
Do you think there's more of a market in the foreign market, like outside of America?
This festival's going on for 35 years, and French love film, so it's developed over a long time. But that's why they get the big crowds. And then the great thing is that even though my movie wasn't actually in competition, it was on the website, they gave me a free pass. So I went over there. And I tried to sell my movie to different TV companies there, and I got a few nibbles. Nothing really happened.
So what was it? TV companies for the
TV companies were there, and they buy short films.
I know my buddy Rod Weber would go to there's a film market you can go to.
Yeah, there was a market there. Yeah,
pitch it.
They had a market at the festival where I went around and met all these people and stuff, and I, met some of the buyers and. I got some nibbles. Even if they buy your movie, they only pay like $500 or $1,000. It's very
and then
low.
they own you and your life.
Yeah, but so I took a shot at it. But the good thing about it is that they had parties for filmmakers every night.
There you go. You're party animal.
Yeah, I met this woman from England and this guy from Serbia, and we just went to parties. They had big parties to give out wine and food at these hotels and for all the filmmakers, and we're like. They're treating us like celebrities. It's great. Even though I didn't have a movie in the actual festival, it was still you're a filmmaker, and it's people. Somebody stopped me in the street, and I said, "Oh, I work at Harvard." You work at Harvard? Stop it! And he pulls out his camera. I want to interview you. I'm just standing on the street corner. It's like they're interviewing me for some French TV show or something. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's exactly what I said. It's like you go to these events, you go to these things, you go to the parties, you meet the women. That's been a theme, and you get the press. Almost just by virtue of. Who was that? Who said 90% of life is showing up?
Oh, Woody Allen. Yeah, I just saw the latest Woody Allen movie. Yeah.
What's the latest movie?
What's it? Unreasonable Man, was it called?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was.
I'm asking.
Irrational Man. It was filmed in Newport.
Aren't you a fan?
Yeah, I like his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think? What was the one? Blue Jasmine. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
With where Andrew Dice Clay kind of played a, like a straight role for him. Kate Blanchett, I think.
Oh yeah.
Louis C.K., the comedian, had more of like a dramatic role. So it was it was good.
It was pretty good. I like his stuff like in Paris and Barcelona he did recently. When he was in Europe, he did in Paris, Midnight in Paris.
Midnight in Paris.
I just watched that the other night.
Owen Wilson, where he goes back. That's like kind of up your alley as far as the writing.
Well, actually, I spent 2 weeks in Paris with Don, and at night we came back. We went and saw that movie together. The day,
that's great.
Like 8 hours had to come back from Paris, so that was pretty cool. They made it special.
So did they actually shoot it in Paris?
Oh yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
So did you notice like the locations?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, Shakespeare and Company in different places by the river. Yeah.
What do you think of? I thought Owen Wilson was cool. I think he's a good actor, and they put him in like a dramatic. Woody Allen always seems to do these sort of semi.
He's like he was Woody Allen's alter ego.
Right. Yeah. He always seems to kind of do that. Because then there's what's the other one? Crimes and Misdemeanors or whatever. He put himself in that. He always seems to. A lot of times make the movie, it's always about a writer or a TV writer, and he's always kind of jaded because he has to do, almost maybe you can relate to, he has to do the corporate stuff to make money, but then he has these more artistic pursuits that he wants to do, that he can't, that sort of battle between being an artist and doing the stuff for the money, It's a never-ending struggle to try to find a balance, but I think this was good.
It's great to be here. Good.
Exciting stuff. Get a few more minutes, Mick, but
right.
we can wrap up. I think it's good. I think telling your story, because we didn't. I know that. When we were when I was helping out our buddy Lawrence Holly when he was working at BATV, and we were working with our buddy filmmaker D.L. Polanski, and he is an eccentric guy, and he would tell us there's this guy. I think we used to see like late night. There'd be these animation blocks, and it was your stuff, and we'd say this is Mick Cusimano, and we didn't like know who you were. I didn't like know who you were. It was this guy who does. I remember D.L. Polanski outlined you as having the distinction where D.L. did his own screening. He did his own screenings at like Out of the Blue Gallery, where he would take films, and of course, many of his own films were the center of the show, of course. Right. So shown several times, and I remember he said he gave you. This is all in fun. I mean, he gave you the distinction. Your films are the films that he would not show. He had the distinction of being rejected from, I think it was called decent exposure, as opposed to indecent exposure. But that was D.L. Polanski.
He did show some of them, but he showed his own movies like every week, the same ones over and over. And I'm like, oh my god.
Do you? Do you think he perhaps showed a particular bias to his own films because he was the curator?
Yeah.
He was the curator of the show, and that'll happen.
I guess I went there because I knew his brother. His brother was a cartoonist, an animator.
Yeah, Gabriel.
And me and Gabriel and two other cartoonists had a cartoon studio in Olsen back in '86. We actually
you keep. We're running out of gas, and then you get another cool thing. You had a what is it? You had a was it olive something jar or something?
No, that's the place where Gabriel worked. It was called Scream Studios. It was me, Rob Zamarki, Gabriel, and this woman.
I didn't even know that. That's cool.
We were cartoonists all together in a studio.
I don't think Lawrence. I gotta say, Lawrence Holly, you gotta listen to this episode.
Way
man,
back in the day, yeah.
So you had a So you're a cartoonist, so you're in Boston, and there's no way we can straighten this timeline out. It's all, kind of, when did he do this and that? Yeah. But, so you were in Boston, you were a cartoonist, and you got, or doing animation or?
No, we're just doing cartoons. We're doing
Gabriel. For people who don't know, Gabriel Polanski and D.L. Polanski, they're brothers, both somewhat eccentric, artist types who, from a very young age, I believe they're also in some, they're like middle-aged dudes now. Nothing wrong with that. But back in they were I think they were even in a book about like kind of like child prodigy artists, like very, very, like, I don't know, 5, whatever they were, to be able to do these art pieces. And their father, Arthur Polanski, was sort of semi like famous and an artist and stuff. And I think the mother did something as well. And then now both in their own separate ways have sort of gone on to be filmmakers in a way, and in the New England area. And of course, D.L. Polanski will tell you that the famous, of course, horror director, and also been in cahoots with Quentin Tarantino, Eli Roth, D.L. will tell you that he taught filmmaking to him in Newton, Massachusetts when he was 12 years old. But and Gabriel also has done some stuff like I think he did a little opening animation for the film Duplex, which was Danny DeVito produced it, and Ben Stiller was in it and whatever. But and then Gabriel has his own little company. So yeah, so Mick Cusimano, you were part of the. That's cool, man. Scream Studios. That's awesome.
Yeah, we hung out together. We all did separate stuff, but I published Underground Surrealist magazine, so I published all their cartoons in my magazine back then. So that's how we all rented a studio together. It was like 4 different desks. So it was kind of cool.
It's all understates like this. Cool stuff that he like. I remember like that's where we interviewed somebody else, this sort of like theater, artsy chick who also was in like a B-52's cover band and just did this rock opera thing. All this like cool like counterculture stuff like you read about. Like where do you go to find that stuff? And they're all understated about it because like they lived it. They don't need to. So you had your own little studio. So did you do any? Was it like work for hire or?
We all worked in different projects. We didn't actually work together, but I was publishing my magazine, so I got all these Boston cartoonists together and published Underground Surrealists with as many Boston cartoonists as I could find. And those 3, of course, were in it because they were in my studio, so so I published them too.
So that's something to
but they're all long out of print, of course.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that's another thing that we should before we go, we should mention that too. Is I'm curious. Didn't really get to ask you. You keep mentioning about Underground Surrealist magazine. So, for people, younger people or whatever, I mean, this is a print magazine.
Yeah.
Like a zine. So, what are the it's kind of like, I guess, like a chapbook. Like what are the logistics of doing that? How do you have to raise money or put in your own money?
Bring your own money.
And find paper, and what do you...
Well, I had friends who were like printers who would give us kind of cheap rates, but we would just go to the printer and print out 100 copies or 2, and I was carried by Tower Records in Capital City for a while, and then that kind of fell through after a couple of years.
So your zine was carried in Tower Records?
A long time ago, for about a year.
So just in Boston? Or?
All over the country.
All over the...
Because I had interviewed this guy in Ukraine, and I did pictures of him and stuff, and just like before the Iron Curtain even came down, and nobody had corresponded with anybody in Russia, and I had this whole thing about these hippies in Ukraine. I had these pictures of it, and the publisher, the Tower guy, flipped out on it. And he said, "I want to buy 100 copies of it." And that's great. So he bought it, and and I still correspond with these hippies in Ukraine. They're on Facebook. They're amazing. There's a whole other world. It's a total different tangent,
I keep people listening. It's like we're about to hit the 2 hours anyway, and I think it's great. But I'm watching Mick sort of. I'm getting tired, and we're getting tired. But then it's like right as I'm going to end, he hits with like the coolest thing. Like, oh yeah, these hippies in Ukraine and Tower Records carried my magazine all over the world and whatever. Don't spill the eggs and
just don't spill the eggs.
If there's one thing you remember from this episode, do not spill the eggs. It's not something you want to do. So I mean, has the internet hurt something like a zine? You know what I mean? Do you
I
still
don't think
try
zines
to
still exist. Not many of them.
Right.
I mean, most of the zines that
magazine.
go around the 80s and 90s that I was published in don't long gone. You know, now people publish on the internet for free.
Just put it online.
Yeah.
So how do you go? Did you pitch it to Tower Records, or did somebody say, "Hey, check this out"?
Maybe I sent them a copy or something. I guess.
And it was going to be in every Tower Records.
It was for about a year or so, and then a different distributor came, a guy, and they didn't carry it anymore.
So what do you do then? You send I print
them out and send it to them. You know.
So you send one thing, and then they just handle the rest.
Yeah.
Which is like the artist.
I sent them. If I had 100 copies, I had to send them 100 copies. I had to print them out and send them to them. You know.
So you still had to. Do you still have to do it on your own dime?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I never made money publishing. You know, it was always, no matter what, you always lost money.
Right. I think that's the same. This whole punk rock thing with zines too. I think it was about word of mouth. Like at least more people will know about my work, right?
Well, that was when Kinko's made self-publishing possible. Anybody around the world could like publish their stuff, you know. So that's when
because you could just go to you could just go to Kinko.
Before that, to go to a printer it would cost a fortune, but then once that you could do it yourself, then it was cheaper and kids could do it. And
so what would you do? Just print out the stuff and fold it and staple it, or just fold it?
I'd staple it, fold it and staple myself, you know. It costs a fortune to have Kinko staple it, you know. It's like a buck of staple.
So what?
They're rip-offs. You have to do it yourself.
So what was the motivation for that? I know it's to you. It's like, what do you mean? But I'm thinking of that.
When I met all these other publishers who were publishing my cartoons, and we were hanging around, and they were publishing magazines every month. And I said, "Oh, maybe I'll publish a magazine." So because I was with a dozen other publishers from Boston, and when they started publishing, I said, "Oh, I'll make Underground Surrealist magazine. I'll make my own magazine," because they were publishing my cartoons like once every 6 months. And I said, "Well, I want to do."
So how do you meet the publishers? How do you?
A friend of mine with Street Magazine knew them all and brought them all together for a meeting. And once we had a meeting,
is this like what people did before email? You had to meet
in real life. Okay. Yeah. we used to actually hang around this one guy's apartment and listen to jazz and have meetings and stuff. We put together a catalog and stuff. And then
that's cool.
And then this one guy named Bob Black was a writer, and he came by, and his ex-girlfriend was there. And one day he attacked her and pulled her by the hair and started wrestling with people. And the cops came and they threw him out, and he ran out of town. And the group broke up after that. You know, he was a famous underground writer, but he was a nutcase. You know?
Bob Black.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still alive, but he was like drunk. And he was a brilliant. He's published in all kinds of zines. He was kind of macabre, but kind of brilliant in a way, I guess, but a little unstable.
So is Bob Black a stage name, or is that his name?
I don't know.
Like Black, macabre. But so what do you think it is about these artist types and being dysfunctional people?
Go to that territory. I mean, oh my God. You know.
That's too big of a topic.
That's too big, yeah.
But I don't know, you always hear that the guy drinking the wine or smoking the cigarette or something and typing away at his typewriter.
That's all mythology of Bukowski, you know. Like.
That's right, Bukowski, right? Yeah. Who said, find what you love and let it kill you.
Yeah.
You know, and I love podcasting, man, because it creates incentive to create this stuff. This was really cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So yeah, it's what else? I guess what the just quick stuff. The latest. Do you want to plug any of the latest thing?
I have a new movie. It's a 2-minute animated movie called Beatniks. And it was commissioned by the 4 Point Channel last year, and I showed it, and I sent it to film festivals. It's been at 8 film festivals in the last year. It's 2 of them in India, 1 in Italy, and yesterday I had to get picked from the Coney Island Film Festival, which is amazing. You know, so it's, I don't know how, I didn't think anyone under 60 even knew what a beatnik was, but somehow it's resonating. I don't know why.
So for people under 60 who don't know what it is, what is a beatnik? I mean, I generally
it's a caricature of the Beat Generation. The Beat Generation was the writers, Kerouac and Ginsberg and stuff. And then
there you go.
In 1959, a guy, Lawrence Lipton, an anthropologist, wrote a book called The Holy Barbarians about beatniks in Venice Beach. And they're all like...
There you go. I've been to Venice Beach, California, man.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to... It's all about you, man. You're the guest, but there's a whole... I been to California, but we did the big cross-country ride. Myself, Lawrence Solly, and our buddy Rod Weber did the cross-country ride, and since come back at Venice Beach.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There were beatniks there, and this guy interviewed him, and he wrote a book about it, and it was a bestseller, and that's when the whole general public found out about beatniks, and it kind of...
And that gets uploaded...
They were in movies, they're caricatures, it was a kind of a joke.
It gets to be that's the thing, I can't even snap, but that's the thing when they do the poetry and they snap it, right? The coffee house, that whole thing.
Yeah, you couldn't clap because you wake up the neighbors, so you snapped.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. It was a Venice Beach coffee house called the Gas House.
That's like last time we had Rod Weber on here. I think we woke up some neighbors doing a podcast, experimentally ill radio. That's cool. And then the other thing, the soul patch, that's the jazz musician thing with the facial hair and those the beret. Oh yeah. Right. That's the beatnik thing.
Right.
So do you identify with the beatniks? Or are you just a fan?
I heard about them when I was a kid, so I was fascinated. I actually did cartoons about them when I was like 10 years old. I didn't really know any beatniks, but I just saw them on TV or movies.
Just the characters.
B-grade movies had them, like the beach movies that have them and stuff.
The beach, like the Frankie Avalon.
Yeah, they had beatnik characters in there, and they were like kind of a joke, but it was kind of interesting. Yeah.
So do you? I guess we didn't really get to talk about Vermin Supreme and him, the whole identifying with the hippie culture and stuff. He's another guy that, I mean, do you identify with the whole hippie thing, or where is that? You're just who
I was in the 60s going to all these rock concerts and stuff, and I had long hair, and I remember walking through college, and a bus full of like jocks were from a school bus going by, and they go, "Hey, look at the hippie over there," and I like, well, "Where is he? Where is he?
Oh, it's me.
There's nobody else here. Oh, it's me. I'm not a hippie. What are you crazy?
Was it like if you had your hair below your ears or something?
I had it down to my elbows.
Oh yeah. Oh, right on. Yeah. Down your elbows.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't necessarily. That was just kind of a.
I picked up some of the, some of the ethos and the peace and love and getting the Woodstock Nation kind of, everybody getting along kind of thing.
Peace and love, yeah.
Yeah, and the networking of, Woodstock was kind of a networking event where people were kind of a community, and I would hitchhike all over the country, and I would when you had long hair after Woodstock, you get a ride anywhere, because it was kind of a subculture going on at the time.
So yeah, that was like, now you can't do that.
No.
So quickly, and we got like 5 minutes. What do you think? So did you I'm going to hitchhike?
Well, I had to junk my car in college because I couldn't afford insurance, so I started hitchhiking back and forth to college in Niagara Falls, and then
so how far? Where were you?
It was like 20 miles, but then I hitchhiked from Buffalo to like Cape Cod. I hitchhiked to Florida once, hitchhiked down to Virginia a couple of times.
So how does that? So that's like an alien concept. Me.
Back then, if you had long hair and you went out on the highway and hitchhiked, you'd get a ride in 5 minutes, and people would put you up in your houses and give you rides, 50, 100 miles, and you get rides left and right, it was just
why long hair became a signpost for this guy is going to be
after Woodstock. Cool. This lasted for about 2 or 3 years, I think,
and then it was like enough of that.
Yeah.
Cut your hair and get a
I haven't seen hitchhiker. I saw one hitchhiker last week. It was a guy with a white shirt and a tie on in Cambridge hitchhiking down the street with a briefcase. That's the first hitchhiker I've seen in like 25 years, so I don't know.
Yeah.
They say nowadays any hitchhikers you see are probably escaped convicts or something, But back then, all young kids hitchhiked all over the place. You hitchhiked to rock festivals. We hitchhiked up to Toronto to see, 10 Years After and Sly and the Family Stone. Get rides with all the other kids going to the festival.
So it wasn't a carpool. It was so you stick your thumb out on the side of the road.
Oh yeah.
And how do you know? Is that the game?
Crazy or not?
How do you know? No, but I mean, like you get in the car, right? Not even so much safety, but they just take you however far they want to take you, and then you hitchhike again.
Yeah.
And there was no concern about how am I going to get back?
We always got a ride. We never got stuck anywhere. I mean, sometimes you would spend an hour somewhere, waiting, but eventually you got a ride. And, one time we met with a girl, and she put us up in her house and fed us dinner and stuff. And another time we met some other hitchhikers. We slept on a beach in Cape Cod,
veggie dinner and
stuff.
So do you think there was a greater sense of community?
Yeah,
at the
after
time?
Woodstock, the Woodstock Nation was kind of a concept that actually did exist for a few years.
So peace, love, understanding, togetherness, that kind of thing. And so the long hair was they're part of this
you're
culture.
Part of that. You had long hair. You got other people with long hair pick you up, or even regular people sometimes.
Yeah. hey, you're one of those hippie beatniks or something.
Yeah.
And you just, how many, I mean, was that a regular thing?
I hitchhiked for like 3 years. I think I hitchhiked like 20,000 miles in 3 years or something, you know.
Kept a speedometer.
Yeah. I don't know. Every now and then just meet some crazy people, but that's a whole other story.
That's nobody. Well, everyone maintain. Well, what? Give me.
One guy picked me up in a Volkswagen. I had been up all night, and I was in Atlantic City, and I was trying to get I had a friend in Virginia, and this guy was going to Baltimore, and he picked me up in a Volkswagen, and he goes, "Oh, you're a hippie. You're part of them people." I said, "Oh yeah," because I was young. I was like 20 years old or something. And he goes, "I was a hippie when I was back in college." He was like 50 years old or something. He said, I was the first person in America who smoked marijuana. I said, "Oh, that's nice, you know." So we're driving 70 miles an hour on the highway. He opens a window and he punches the car next door. He punched the car next to him.
Oh, he punched like against the door?
Yeah, when it's 70 miles an hour on the highway. And he pulls up the next car and he punches that car. I said, "What the fuck?" He looks at me and he goes, "Some people think I'm crazy." I said, "I think I'm crazy too." I said, "Oh, look at that. My exit's right. That's my exit. Next one. Suddenly, exit 62. I'm getting out here."
Suddenly it's like, well, I have long hair, but I'm not all that's crazy. I'm going to get out at this.
Yeah.
So is he doing that to screw with you, you think? Like,
I don't know what
that was him. Or you weren't going to wait to find out?
I got off the next exit.
Let me get off the next exit. Well, that is quite a way to end it.
Yeah.
Do some people think Mick Cusimano is crazy because he just does things. He just creates art out in the world. It's cool, man. Mick Cusimano, cartoonist, filmmaker, poet, the professor of surrealism. Let's do some plugs. You got your website. Well, they can Google you, right? Mick
Cusimano. Yeah,
and your website, mcusimon.tripod.com, and on YouTube and Facebook, all over the internet and stuff. Cool. And he's doing you're doing 5 movies, right? You're doing or something like that.
I'm trying to shoot 4 different movies this summer
at the same time.
Yeah, short ones.
Rather ambitious.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll catch up with you for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Hey, I am your host, Mike O'Toole. Follow me on Twitter at Mike O'Toole. And this was the August 22nd, 2015, episode 82 of Experimental Radio, and this was really cool. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say is until next time, persist to get ill.